Hey guys, it's Kelly. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you the 13 books that I read in the month of March. I got my stats of what I read, and I like my stats. So I read 3 nonfiction, 6 fiction, 1 middle grade, and 3 graphic novels. I participated in 1 readathon. That was the Buzzword Readathon, and I read 2.5 books in that. My vlog is coming eventually. It's spring break when I'm filming this, and I've been taking a break. This is my 2nd week from YouTube, so it's my 2nd week from filming and editing, and I'm getting rusty. So for 13 books, I enjoyed half of them. I don't know where I want to put this, so I want to go and show you I'm just going to jump right into it. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So, the first book I read is Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. This is about a boy, or a man, named Charlie, and he has a low IQ. Charlie is chosen to take part in this experiment to boost his IQ, and it works. He becomes Albert Einstein IQ genius level. He learns multiple languages, and he basically becomes smarter than all of the college professors on this campus. The first subject in this experiment was a little white mouse named Algernon, and they do mazes with him, cheese mazes and stuff like that. Eventually Algernon starts getting aggressive and starts slowing down. He forgets easily, and so that's what starts happening to Charlie. This is a very well-known book. I had to read it in 6th grade, and I don't know how my teachers thought it was an appropriate book for me to read in 6th grade, because it deals with bullying, and sexual stuff, and yeah. I cried at the end, only a little bit. It didn't really make me sad. I did have it rated as a 2 out of 5 the first time I read it, because I was 11 years old, and I didn't get it. How he was writing, how he wasn't spelling right, I didn't understand. And I gave it a 2 out of 5 for that. And now I'll just give it a 3 out of 5, because I didn't like the multiple uses of the word retarded. And this book I read is Sammy's Lip Pick review copy, and she's reading it right now and she's loving it. It is The Door to January by Gillian French. It is a paranormal thriller time travel. It's about this girl named Natalie, and she's having dreams of this abandoned house. When she was 11 or 12, her and her cousin were bullied and terrorized by the neighborhood bullies, and she had a gun shoved in her face. And so after that, her and her parents moved away, and then they came back, and she's working in her family's diner that has been passed down for generations, and she's having dreams and visions of this abandoned house. And her cousin keep going to this house to try to figure out why she's having these dreams. And with the house, it was with the family, a Russian family who had a son fight in World War II, and he changed. So it is short, but it packs a punch. I read it one night, and it was at a scary part during the time she went back in time to this house, and it scared. I heard a sound in my house, and it scared me so much I would not read this at night. And my kid's reading it that night before she goes to bed, so she's braver than me, or she hasn't got to that part yet. That scared me, but I highly enjoyed this. I give it a 4.5 out of 5. And Gillian French has a new book coming out, I think, next month, The Missing Season, and I really, really, really want to read it. I know that the blog tour company that I host with is doing a Blitz post, so I'm hoping that they get a review opportunity so I can possibly do a host spot. But if not, that's cool. I'm going to be doing the Blitz post on my blogs. My blog is linked down below, and my Instagram, so go check out and follow those 2 things. And yeah, I highly enjoyed this. I'm going to have to read more of Gillian French's work. I loved the writing style, and it had a creep factor. The third book I read was a nonfiction. It is Voices from Chernobyl. It's an oral history of all the people's accounts and histories that were affected and traumatized and severely health-wise affected by the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. It talks the people, they talk about how they saw the army and how it was another war. It doesn't specify which war. You might think I thought it was World War II when they were talking, because they were talking about the concentration camps and the Jews, and then it made me think of the Cold War possibly, because Chernobyl took place in the 80s and the Cold War was right after World War II. So it doesn't specify which war, but those two wars are a deciding factor, maybe. And they talked about how it was covered up by the government, how it wasn't, nobody knew what radiation was, and they were still eating their potatoes and they were still gardening right after it happened, and they wanted to take everything. They were smuggling, and the firefighters who were there, who were the first responders, how they died in the first 12-14 days from radiation burns. And yeah, so it was, I enjoyed it, but I learned some things about Chernobyl that I didn't know, like how it was cover up and how the government, the Russian government and the Ukrainian government was throwing it under the rug, and how they didn't see it as a big worldwide disaster, and how it was affecting the entire world, how it affected Europe a couple days after, and then it came over the Atlantic and into the United States and Canada and stuff like that a few weeks later. People still today, how the old people still today don't think it was really bad, and that they still wish that Russia was the government of Ukraine, how the Ukrainians are better off under Russian influence and government. I recommend it if you are interested in more Chernobyl facts, because it's really eye-opening, and how they blame the Western countries of making Chernobyl this big deal, bigger deal than it really was. The next 3 books that I read were e-copies. I did a blog tour spot on these 3 graphic novels, and while I was reading them, Samantha saw that they were graphic novels and she wanted to read them, and I checked my library, and my library had all 3 copies. So I picked them up, and the first one is Delilah, Dirk, and the Turkish Lieutenant. Delilah, Dirk, and the King Shilling. Didn't really like this one. And then the third one, which is my favorite, is Delilah, Dirk, and the Pillars of Hercules. This little graphic novel series is about an English lady named Delilah Dirk, and she is known as a globe-trotting troublemaker. She is very well adept in swordplay and acrobatics, archery, and mayhem. And she's basically a traveling lady who seeks out, she's like a Robin Hood, but she keeps the treasure for herself. So she steals from the rich and keeps for herself. And she has this flying ship. It takes place in the 1800s, so it's a boat that flies. And she meets her traveling partner, Mr. Salim, in the first book. He is a Turkish lieutenant, and he does not know what to think of Miss Delilah Dirk. He is confused. He is very adamant against traveling and her doing anything that will get them in danger and killed. She steals from a king, I think, yeah, a Turkish king, French-British war in Spain, and she makes enemies with a British colonel who tries to frame her for being a spy to the French when actually he's a spy. And so we learn her real name in this one and who she really is. In the third one, we go on an adventure, and it's kind of like National Treasure when they go across the world and looking for clues to find this big treasure. And yeah, this one's my favorite. I always wanted to be something like a National Treasure Nicolas Cage person. Actually, yeah, not Nicolas Cage, but yeah, something like his job in that movie. I love those movies. And yeah, and it's got an enemy called the Dutchman, and yeah. So here's the artwork. It's very straight lines, and yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed these. I think this one came out in December of last year. And me and Samantha really want another in the series. The next book I read was Sphinx's Princess. It's about Nefertiti. It's a historical fiction set in ancient Egypt. It's about Nefertiti and her childhood, how she was the niece to Queen Taiji, or Taiji. I forget the name. I don't have the book with me. It's back at the library. But it's about her childhood and how she was afraid of lions, and how if she just prayed a lot and was brave, she could defeat the lions in her dream. And it's about her and her family going to, not Cairo, Thebes, to the king, the pharaoh and the queen, and how the queen wants Nefertiti to marry her cousin to secure his spot as the next pharaoh. And there's a lot of family drama, as there was in ancient Egypt. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy the romance, or how the connection, how Nefertiti was supposed to marry her cousin. Nah, but I shipped her other cousin with Nefertiti, which is kind of bizarre. But I don't remember the names because I don't have the book. But I really enjoyed it. I got the sequel in my room waiting to be read. Because that cliffhanger, though. And I'm sorry I keep looking this way. There's a tractor in the field behind my house. So. And they're about to start planting. And yeah. Okay. But it was by Esther Friesen, I think. And she's well known for doing historical fiction books on like Helen of Troy, Nefertiti, and those well-known important historical women. This book I read, it was my middle grade, and it is The Star Thief by Lindsay Becker. This was a Passbox Owl Crate that I bought for Sammy before I subscribed, and I've been wanting to read this book ever since I saw an unboxing on a Dash of Ashes channel. And I think this was the first one that she did. And it's signed. This is about a girl named Honorine, who is a house servant to the Lord Vidalius. Vidalia Onion. That was easy. I kept thinking of that every time I heard the name, or read the name. And she is not what she seems. The lady of the house, Lady Vidalia, she's very superstitious. The husband, Lord Vidalia, has gone missing. And so Lady Vidalia put all these omen stones up, and every time they glow yellow, that means a constellation or something mystical is nearby. Well, one night they start glowing, and Honorine starts seeing all these scorch marks in the shapes of hooves or footprints in the carpet. And so one night she sees these intruders in the house, and she hides, and she follows them outside into the garden, and then she meets the map maker, who is not a good guy, but he's not a bad guy either. He's like in the middle. And he has good intentions, and he has bad intentions. And then she meets some constellations, and then she finds out that her father and her mother, who didn't really abandon her, but separated to keep her safe, and her father is like a bad guy, not a good guy either. It goes on their adventures to try to save constellations, and the constellation's city home So I really enjoyed it. I gave it my ratings will be down below. I don't remember what I rated these, but I think I gave this a 4 out of 5, 3 out of 5. I don't know. Like I said, down below. There's no saying on Goodreads if this is a standalone or a sequel. I would enjoy a sequel, but I think it's better off as a standalone. But if a sequel does arise, then I'll be interested. But it's perfect way to. And this is her debut, and on her Goodreads it says it don't say anything about her writing any more books or any more in this series, or if this is going to be a series. Yeah. The artwork is just beautiful. The next book I read, it was highly anticipated, and when I got it, I was a little let down by the size. I read The Bells last month, and it was one of my favorites of the year. The writing style and the writing was so lyrical and beautiful. All the descriptions was just perfect. And then this one came. You see, it's tiny as hell. I am mixed. I am glad to be back in this world and following Camellia and her sisters, but I didn't like the rule breaking and how every time there was something like cliffhanging, there almost every chapter had a cliffhanger, and then the start of the next chapter just went in a totally different direction. It did not pick up where the cliffhanger left off. It didn't answer. I left this book with more questions than answers, and it seemed rushed, and the ending was very rushed. I expected more action. I expected more fight. I expected Princess or Queen Sophia to at least do more damage to Camellia and Amber at the end in the ballroom, but it just went like that. This was sent to me by Hatchet Book Group, so thank you, Hatchet. I did a blog tour spot on this for Rockstar Book Tours, so thank you, Rockstar Book Tours, for giving me the opportunity. I don't know what else to say about this book. I did really enjoy it. I gave it a 4 out of 5. But I didn't like how the rule breaking, she was in love with Remy, and in the first book it says that if you fall in love, it'll hurt your arcana, and she fell in love. She was still hung up over Augustus, and I read the author's note and how Danielle Clayton was writing this while she was undergoing treatments and doctor's appointments and stuff, and how she had to meet deadlines. So I think that's why I had a problem with this book, that she was rushed. I think that books should have certain deadlines, and that you should not be rushed. That's probably part of the problem with publishing today. They rush authors to get books out there, and sometimes they're shitty. This was not shitty, but it was like a little crappy at most. But I understand why Danielle Clayton was rushed and why most of this book was rushed. And she said that this is the end of the Bells series. I'm kind of mixed on that. I don't like how it left off, and I still have more questions. And the ending with all of that, the queen and abdicating and stuff like that. Why? But I think this is a good leave off, because the third book could be rushed too if there was a third book, and it could not be as great. Sometimes, like the Lady Rebels or something like that, how the first book was so hyped on BookTube, and then the second book was just trash talked, and the third book was like non-existent on BookTube. I think that it's a good stop off, but I don't think it's a good stop off either. The next book I read was Winger by Andrew Smith. I read an Andrew Smith book The first one I read was Rabbit and Robot, and that was completely a mindfuck. Winger, I absolutely loved. It was hilarious. I loved the illustrations and all the humor. It made me laugh out loud multiple times. It's about Ryan Dean West. He's at a private school for rich kids, and he is being roomed, or he's living in the O Hall, which is an opportunity hall for troublemakers. He stole and hacked a cell phone, and he is part of the rugby team, and he's a 14-year-old junior in high school. That's all there is, and he's a pathetic loser. It says pathetic loser so many times in this book. That was my one con, how many times it said that. Oh, I am such a loser. I am a pathetic loser. I'm so losery. So many times it made me cringe. But it's about his time as a junior and his friendships and how he's trying to stay out of trouble so he can go back into the boys' dormitory, the regular kids, and how he's in love with his best friend who's 16. And yeah, the ending, it made me cry. I could not stand it. It was just awful. Joey was my favorite character, and yeah, I'm not gonna say anymore. I read this because Sammy got a review copy of Standoff from Litpick, and so I'm going to reread Winger. I'm rereading Winger with her, so we can read Standoff together. And yeah, it had some bad words in it, and it had some naughty talk in it, so I'm reading that with her. And we're going to read Standoff, which I can't wait to read. And I've heard not good things about Standoff, how it's bad. But yeah, I enjoyed Winger. I gave it a 5 out of 5. The first book that I read for the Buzzword Readathon was This Family of Mine by Victoria Gotti. It had the word "what" in the subtitle. This is a nonfiction about Victoria Gotti. She is the daughter of John Gotti. I've done mention this book so many times in previous videos. It talks about John Gotti's childhood, her mother's childhood, and how they eventually met, with her mother just going into one of John Gotti's clubs, and because some creepster was following her, and then they got together, and their relationship was not wanted by the family. And so it talks about Victoria Gotti also goes into her childhood and how she got her name, and all her health issues, and how she met her husband Carmine, and how her dad didn't approve. It also talks about the mob, and during her dad's time, all his times in jail, and how she disapproved of the mafia lifestyle along with her mother. And yeah, I enjoyed it. It made me cry a lot, and it was just a very eye-opening. It talks about how Sammy the Bull Gravano was a rat and wiretapped John Gotti, and that's what got him into prison. And it talks about the government being a mafia, but it legalized mafia because it takes money from the people. And yeah, it goes into her wedding, and that's Victoria Gotti with her dad. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5. I'll go more into it in my blog post about what made me cry. I cannot talk about it on a video, or I will start bawling again. The next book I read for the Buzzword Readathon was When Dimple Met Rishi. This was the main buzzword for this readathon. And I expected Rishi and Dimple to meet way later in the book. I did not expect them to meet in like the first 2-3 chapters. And Dimple, she's sassy. I like that about her. But she is abusive as hell. She's always hitting Rishi for no reason. And The format or the writing style of this book I didn't really like, because one chapter would start with Rishi and then it'll go straight to Dimple, and then Dimple would have like a little paragraph in that one chapter, and then the next chapter would start with Dimple. It just made no sense in my opinion. It was confusing. I didn't like it, and so I really want to read There's Something About Sweetie, because it has it follows Rishi's brother Ashish, and Sweetie is a plus size girl like myself, but I don't think I'm going to read From Twinkle with Love. I may give it a flip through to see what the format is. If it's like this, I'm not going to read it. If it's a different kind of format and it's just chapter headings instead of having like blocks for the characters and then they start that same character on a different chapter, on the next chapter, I'm not going to read it. I wanted more about the app and less about the talent show. It's marketed as this Indian girl wants to build an app at a convention. She does that, but this book is mostly about the talent show that they have to win in order to gain an advantage of $1,000 for their app. It's all about this talent show and how she has to compete against these aber zombies, and one of her best friend, her roommate, who she met online. Don't do that, kids. No. So I give this a 3 out of 5. I really wanted to like it, but the writing style just threw me off. The last book I read for the month of March and for the readathon, I read half of it during the readathon and then the readathon ended. But that book is Dewey, the small town library cat who touched the world. I highly enjoyed this. I gave it a 4 out of 5 because I love all the parts about Dewey and how he had his little quirks and how he would greet the patrons and how he would spend he would choose who to spend more time with based on their how they were feeling that day. But the thing I didn't care about was the town history. I didn't care about Spencer, Iowa at all. I didn't care about the corn or the corn silk or how many cornfields, or that Spencer was had a slaughterhouse and how they didn't want a Walmart to compete, and I did not care one single bit about how their Grand Avenue is on a National Historic Register. I didn't care about that, and that was mainly part of the book. What I did care about was the cat story and the author's story. She had so many freaking hardships. She was a single mom. She was her husband turned alcoholic. She had to have a hysterectomy where they took her uterus and both of her ovaries so she couldn't have no more kids. She had to have a double mastectomy where she had both of her boobs lost. And I enjoyed reading about her history and how she was affected by Dewey and how he helped her. And then Dewey, how he was the coolest cat and how he brought the town together. I just did not give a shit about this town history. I didn't. I was bored. I was flipping. I was skimming. Like, yeah. I didn't care about the town. But I give it a 4 out of 5. Dewey was just the cutest cat. And he made me think a lot of my own cats. I spent a lot of time hugging President Snow and Luna and Missy. And I cried, of course, when he was put to sleep. And the thing about the rubber bands, yes, I agree wholeheartedly with the rubber bands. And yeah, so if you're into cats, read this. If you don't give a shit about town histories, then I suggest skimming through those parts. That is it for this wrap up. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Hit subscribe. Let me know what you read for March. If you did a March wrap up video, link it down below in the comments and I will go and watch it and comment on it. And if you don't comment regularly, then just leave a little emoji down below. Leave a cat emoji down below. If you did enjoy this video, let me know. Those likes are very important. And yeah, I'll see you in my next video. Bye.